everybody, it's Megan Barnhard
and Ella.
And we're here in All Writers Welcome to talk about a topic that a lot of people ask about all the time, and it's how to promote your book. And we called it How to Promote Your Book and Yourself because when you are not a name brand author, those two things have to go hand in hand, right? Like one of the big ways, like one of the most concrete ways I see that was you helping me learn how to build covers. And that moment where you're like, Megan, the title of the book's got to be big, your name not so much, right? And it makes that's where it hits home, where it's like, oh, I need to do two things when I'm promoting my book. I need to put it out there, but I also need to put myself out there. So that's yeah. So I guess let's just jump right in with some of the questions people ask. Oh, but I also wanted to ask you about this, Ella, because you have been talking about this a lot, and I know you are really adamant about it. Starting to promote your book, excuse me, and yourself before you finish your book, and in some cases before you start your book. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think every author should do is to have an author website. Like, have a place outside of Facebook or outside of Twitter that you can start building content and building maybe an email list. Because if people like your book, let's say you have a book out there, or maybe you don't, but let's say you're about to have a book out there and you start building, you're talking to people and they want to be able to find you, and it's wanting to be easy to find you. And Facebook, there's so much on Facebook that's just easy to kind of get lost. You don't know that Facebook's going to put your stuff up at the top or not. Yeah. So if they have a place that they can
see, the way the algorithm, who knows?
Yeah, they've got algorithms, right? So if you can have your own place, and of course they can link to Facebook and then they can find you there. But if you have your own place that people know they can find you, and they're on your email list, I think that's I'm planning on writing a book this summer, and I already made my website. The website's up.
Is that more motivating to you to write? Do you think there's pardon me, sorry, I don't know, I'm so scratchy. Do you think there's a mindset piece to that too?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think it's I'm a real author. I already have a website.
It's self-reinforcing, right? So when you're sitting down to write and you're going, oh, I could write, or I could go do whatever, I could pay the bills or, do the other stuff that has to get done in life. You have already put yourself out there some. It's like a challenge. And I want to go back to what you said about having a website. And I know you've got coming toward us some very easy and very practical ways to get that set up. And I know some people hear website and they think that means I have to hire a designer for, $3,000. It's simply not true. Ella's doing some fantastic research and getting some thoughts together and using it herself, right? This is not hypothetical knowledge. So she's going to have some really cool stuff to share coming up soon. But the idea of a website is people can always find you. And that's what you were saying. We're a newsletter that can always find you. And I think the disappointment a lot of people have with a book or with anything close to their hearts that they want to share is they run into somebody and hey, I have this exciting thing going on. And at the time that person's like, okay, cool. Oh, devastated, right? But you have no idea what that person's thoughts are. And maybe she's walking away going, well, that sounds interesting, but I'm busy right now. I'm picking up the kids. And a month later, she'll go, what was that? Ella was writing that book and it sounded so interesting and I wanted to hear more. And then she'll go search for it. And if she can't find it on Facebook because the streams are just endless, that's it. That's done. But if she can if she can message you and say, how do I get that? And you can send her the website or she can find it on her own. It's a mistake to think that just because people aren't interested right at that second and they don't hit or comment on your post right then, that they won't be interested later. So give them a bookmark.
Dude, that's so true. Because you're this is what's interesting to me, but it's not necessarily everybody is actually interested in what's happening with them. And then when they have extra attention, they give it to somebody else.
This happens so many times. You and I will talk about something and you'll be reading a great book and you'll tell me about it and I just won't have the bandwidth for it. right?
Yeah.
I'll be like, well, that sounds interesting, but I'm not ready right now to read about whatever topic that is. And then a few months will pass and I'll go, Ella, what was that book? Or, what was that podcast? Or what was that YouTube video? So yeah, that's huge. And I love that if you start it ahead of time, you motivate yourself. So now let's switch gears and talk a little bit about when people do promote on social media, because obviously that's going to happen. I mean, I think it's naive to think you'll really get your book out to a lot of people without social media, unless you have the private jet and the like the agent who's booking you at every bookstore across the nation, right?
Yeah.
And this kind of brings up a little tangent, but there are certainly other ways to promote your book and yourself than the ones we're going to talk about today. But we really are talking about the ones that anybody with any budget can use, right?
Yes.
And again, going back to, some people think, you can't build a website unless you have so many thousands of dollars. Some people think, well, I can't promote because I don't have the money to do Facebook ads and I don't have the money to hire a social media expert. There are so many things you can do.
Just my cat. I'm sorry.
Get a cat who will go tell everybody in your neighborhood.
He's like, you're sitting down. Okay. Yeah. Yes, I do think I think social media is a great way to promote your book. Like you said, sometimes even before you've written it. And one of the best ways to do that is just by connecting with other people. Like even if it's just connecting with other authors, because most authors are also readers. So if you find other authors who are writing in similar genres as you, like, that's not just like somebody has a similar job or similar desires as you to write a book, but it's also most likely your target audience.
Right.
Those are the people who are going to read your book later. And I know I think there's kind of an expectation when you're on social media and that you don't, it can't be a very intimate connection, or it's so you're like, and that you just want quantity, not quality. Like, you just like as many people as possible like your page, or as many people as possible to go to your Amazon. But that's not actually the ideal. The idea, and so if you do it by numbers, like if you're like, oh, there's only so many people liking my page, and then you might,
it could be easy to feel
like you're failing at something when actually you're doing fine, because what the actual value, especially when you're starting to connect, or you have not that many people. One, when you have not that many people that you're connecting with, it gives you more time to connect with them because you have just a couple. So you can create more quality connections, but also, I'm having, my kitties are playing. They're like, but also, but also, those are the kind of connections that you want to make and be yourself, because what happens is then maybe later when they have a book that's coming out, they're like, hey, Ella, can you share my book? Mm-hmm. And you're like, sure, because you're friends, or you're like friendlier than just like a click. Right. And on the other hand, then you get to go, you can go back to them and say, hey, my book's out. Yeah. Can you promote it on your, and they'll be like, yeah, this is my great friend. So that's a lot more valuable.
That's the thing in a world inundated with like input, right? There's so much input coming at us all of the time. None of us is hungry for more yelling. None of us is like, gosh, I wish something just big and loud would come along and announce stuff to me. But I think we're all starved for intimate conversation. And I'm in this amazing Facebook group called the Old Souls Club, and it's run by a woman who's a spiritual teacher. And there are a couple hundred people in there, but it is the most amazing intimate conversation, and people share their paths and what's going on, and other people offer advice. And there's a thread in there right now about money, and it's really just lovely and intimate. And it's all because of the tone set by Saisha, who's the woman who runs it. It's completely the tone. and how she encourages people to interact, right? And so that, to me, that's a great example of how possible it is to share the most intimate things. But I think it's also a model, because when you're promoting your book, it's not that you have to share all your deep, dark secrets and, the reason I'm writing is because aliens abducted me and, they whatever it is, whatever we all
my tortured childhood.
Right. I mean, look, to be frank about it, a lot of people who create art create from a place of pain to heal the pain, and that's lovely, and I respect that. Yeah. And you don't have to share that deeply, but we are all compelled by stories. So this goes back to starting early. If you start reaching out to your network and tell the story of you writing, guys, I'm really excited. I'm about to start this book. I'm really, what I'm most excited about is it's going to be this protagonist who is like this and she does that. There's somebody in our group right now who is, I think she's at the beginning stages of drafting, but she's writing a story about a girl with severe learning disabilities. I am so hooked. I want to read that book. Yeah. To me, that is really interesting. So I am following that story, right? So if you go up and you start telling your story, again, doesn't have to be the most intimate, deep part, but you could share in a vulnerable way. It's totally up to you, but start telling the story of you writing the story. Give us a progress. Tell us where you're struggling. Then by the time it gets to your book is almost done, think of the connections you've made with people, right? Mm-hmm. And that's then when you announce, you guys, this is so exciting. I've just hit publish on Amazon. Here's the link. My book is available. Mm-hmm. The response you'll get to that is from people who are celebrating with you the completion of your story, of writing your story. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, I have a book, you guys, you should read my book, that's noise. Yeah. And the reality is, a lot of people have a book, and I've experienced this at networking groups too, where somebody doesn't get that everybody there has a business, right? Why didn't you refer me? Why didn't you promote my business? Why didn't you tell everybody that I was doing this program? We all have something we want to get out in the world. So yeah. You have to keep that in mind, and it doesn't mean don't keep going and ask people for, hey, would you be willing to give me this help, or would you be willing to share this if you know somebody who loves science fiction. But we all have something we want to get out. Yeah.
The strength of social media is that you can build one connection with somebody, but they have a connection with all of their people. And then if they have one person in there, then that person has a connection with all of those people. So that's the strength of social media isn't necessarily how many connections you as one person can make.
Right.
It's actually the quality of the connections that you can make as one person. And then you can get and then that person, the people that you have connected with, they get to share with their people. That's the strength of social media, is the sharing, not necessarily just the one connection you can make. So here's like I think about it like if you were going to refer, like in social media, basically you're referring yourself, or you're asking other people to refer you. Okay. So like at a job, like if you know somebody who can do a job, but maybe that they don't do it very well. Like you're like, oh, I need somebody to clean my house. And you're like, well, I know somebody who can do that. Yeah. But I can't recommend them because I know this other thing. Or like if you're dating somebody, like, hey, set me up with so-and-so. And they're like, you're like, I can't because I really like you, but you're not the kind of dateable, whatever, I had a lot of that when I was single, because people like, I don't have any friends that are good enough for you. Anyways. Anyways, the point is though that
I had that feeling.
I'm pretty sure you might have been one of them. But
I was definitely.
But so you want on social media people to refer you, you want to be referring yourself. And so you want to have quality connections, and people are like, hey, I know this lady who's writing this book about kids with disabilities, and you have met that connection, and you're like, ooh, that sounds really great. And then you get to because it's a quality connection, you get to then promote it to the people that you know and that would be interested in kids with disability stories.
Yeah. And let's jump in and talk about that, because the difficulty is if it's somebody who's going to clean your house or, you know, there are all these realms where you would have experienced the person's value. And with writing, it's not as if we're going to get to read everybody's. So the number one thing I think authors can do is advice that I got from Jenny Shih, the business coach. And I think it applies to everything you do on social media, whatever your goal is, whether it's building your business, whether it's promoting your book, or even just building your network and you're not sure what you want to do with it yet. It's show up and be helpful. This is the way we make ourselves referable. And if you're not sure what that means, then first just show up and be kind.
Yeah.
Read through what other people are posting about. And when they have great things to share, just hit like, right? You don't even have to think of a comment. Somebody's like, oh, I just passed this milestone and I got through writing this hard scene. Oh, hit it with a like. You know, if somebody has a struggle and you empathize with it, don't hold back. Get in there and comment. You know, wow, I really feel you on that. I've gone through that too. I'm sorry to hear that. Right. Then if you get inspired and you go, gosh, I feel like I know how to give a suggestion for that, how to help. Somebody saying, I don't know how to do it. And you go, well, what I've tried that worked was X, Y, and Z. You are building a reputation as somebody who is kind, empathic. Is it empathic or empathetic, Ella? I always
I think
a person who is kind has empathy. and is helpful and is showing up. And the other thing this is doing is getting your name in people's memories, right? There's so much information. We have to see you several times before you even stick in our memory. So what's the way you want to stick in somebody's memory? If you're going to keep showing up, a huge mistake that I think a lot of us make on social media is we go, I have to get on people's radar. I have to stay present. So I'm just going to keep showing up and I'm just going to keep saying my book, my book, my book, my book, my book, right? Then you'll remember me. And people will remember you as the person they want to turn the volume down on. They're like, oh, yes, I know who you are. I've already heard from you 16 times. But if you keep showing up with, oh my gosh, congratulations, or a like, or I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope things get better. Or, oh, have you tried Google Keep, or whatever your suggestion is, then you start building that up. And then you can go to the next step, which would be if you have your author website and you've started blogging about anything. Yeah. Once you've built up some referral points with people, then you can take it to the next step and say, if you're interested, I wrote a cool blog post on what I do when I have writer's block. Yeah. There you go. And you have to feel it out. You know, you have to feel like, is this, I think a good rule to follow is this a way I would share with a friend? Right. Like how to avoid being spammy. Well, would I share this way with my friend? If somebody I know in real life had posted this, would I feel like what I have to say would be helpful? Yeah. Or am I just throwing it out there?
And I think even taking it a step further, Megan, of when you're liking people's social media content, if you want to, like if you see something that resonates with you, that you want to share it with your group, share it with your tribe, and then reach back out to the person and be like, hey, I just shared this because I think it's great. Like let them know, because people don't always know, and start a conversation. Like, I think it's great, when is the book coming out, or what inspired you, or just ask a question and get a conversation going, because that's how you can connect with people. And
that's a win-win-win. Yes. Right. And this actually happened recently in our group. So a while back, there was a conversation in All Writers Welcome about blogs and what to write when you have a blog as an author. And that's a complex topic. Somebody yeah. And then I was in another writers group and came across this woman's blog post about what you can do. And I just really loved her take on it. I thought she had some really fantastic ideas. And also her whole approach was, kind of not to give into the fear of an author blog has to be a certain way. And if I don't do it that way, it's not good. So I really loved her take on it. I shared it in our group, which meant the people in All Writers Welcome who'd been asking that question got some great information. Right?
Yeah. Right.
I got to earn hopefully some more brownie points of like, I'm being helpful, guys. I hope you think of me as somebody helpful. And I let this woman know, hey, I shared your post in our group, which means that she really got the great feedback. It's hard when you just post up and you don't know if it's helping people, right? She was like, oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad that people found it helpful. And everybody wins in that situation. So yeah, making those connections across platforms and across groups is super helpful. I would recommend, if you're actively promoting your book, to get out there and find a bunch of groups, a bunch of online spheres to hang out in, where you can make these kinds of connections. Don't just think by sharing it on your author page or your business page, if the two are overlapped, that people are going to see it. Like, actively go to groups. And there are a lot of groups that have specific sharing days, and, here's a day to share your blog, and here's a day to share your Facebook author page.
But you can always be making connections. You don't have to wait for the promotion day to be able to connect with other people and be like, and help them, and then start a conversation or share their content, or like, you don't have to wait until those days to be able to doing that. Cause then you start adding friends, or you're like, hey, I share a lot of my own information on my page, and you can do it in the context, and that's not a promo. It's in the context of a conversation that you've already started.
Exactly. So, yeah. And a great way to start those conversations is to ask other people about their books and their writing and what they're doing. And then what comes out of that, you can respond to. And we all like talking about what we're doing.
I know, that's what I'm saying. A good way of measuring, like, how do I do that? Well, what would you love people to be asking you about your book? And go ahead and share it. Like, so if you went to your page and you were like, and ideally you had people who were like, what is your next book about? When is it coming out? Oh my gosh. Like, all the questions that you would love people to be asking you, those are the same questions you could be asking other people, and starting a conversation.
Yeah. And even about writing process, if you're not sure what kind of book somebody writes. And there are some really great examples in All Writers Welcome. I would encourage people to go through the stream and look for places where people are asking questions, because what they're really doing is starting great conversations. And it might be about your book specifically. How do you choose your main character? But it might also be about process. What do you do when you get stuck in this place or that place? Or there was a really interesting conversation that I was part of in a group recently, and it was about does your main character have to resemble you? What is it like when a man writes a woman, or when there are these when you cross ethnicities? And there was a lot of really interesting thought that came out of it, and a lot of very like cool connections happening, because you could see people. It was all really civil, but you could see people going, oh yeah, I totally see your point of view. And you could see those kind of within the conversation, the larger conversation, the smaller like magnet points where these people are like, oh yeah, I totally. Well, I imagine that following this interesting, like deep conversation, those people stayed connected because they got this opportunity to go, yeah, I really think the way you do. Yeah. I really have that comment.
Yeah.
So
cool.
You can look for, the smaller things.
So do we have an action step?
Yeah. So practice being helpful and promoting yourself by promoting the best parts of yourself. In the comment thread for this video, take a minute to share what you're doing for your book or for your writing practice in a way that is inviting to other people. So whether it's a progress update, or it's a question, or it's a struggle, practice sharing in a way that would invite somebody else to respond. So whatever that looks like for you, go ahead and throw it in the comments for this video so we can all practice showing up and being helpful.
Yeah.
And I'll put the links below to two things I mentioned. One is the Old Souls Facebook Club. I don't know if anybody else is interested in that. But also, yeah, right. But also I mentioned Jenny Shih, who's a business coach, and she has so much content that really is applicable to promoting yourself. I mean, it's about building your business, but she has a lot of content, a lot of which is absolutely free. So I'll put a link to her site as well, because I want to give credit. That's where I learned the phrase "show up and be of service," and I think it's just really applicable and really, really beautiful too.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Cool. Oh, so we are Megan and Ella. We're in All Writers Welcome, and yeah, we look forward to seeing your comments.
Yep.
And your shares.
And so does Charlie. Charlie's happy too.
All right. See y'all next time. Bye.